The ongoing changes with the coronavirus is having a dramatic effect on how we live our daily lives, but it's also affecting how realtors do their business. So today on Talking Real, we talk about some best practices in managing your business in the midst of this outbreak.
COVID-19 and how it affects you as a realtor.
Welcome back to Talking Real, brought to you by the Oklahoma Association of Realtors. This is episode 111 of Talking Real, and we are social distancing, not in the Talking Real studio, but we're still bringing you an episode today. And so, Nabil, from another location through the magic of the internet, how are you today?
Uh, I feel like I've been better. This is interesting times that
Yes,
we're in
indeed.
right now.
It is.
Uh, didn't think that we'd see something like this. It seems like something out of a movie with
Right.
all the news coming out and everything happening. So,
Yeah, it's crazy. And especially with as quick as things are changing,
hmm
a week ago, it was
that,
pretty much life was just business as usual for the most part. And now everything has changed, everything.
yeah,
And it seems to be
yeah.
changing like by the hour and day, it just,
That's what it seems like. It's like people say daily updates, and I'm like, I feel like we need something faster than
right,
that.
right,
Um, but yeah, it'll definitely is going to be a little challenging and interesting, but we'll make it through.
for sure. And so, like everybody else right now, I mean, the news and just social media and life is being consumed by the coronavirus, COVID-19. And,
hmm
you know, of course, here on Talking Real, we sometimes like to talk about what's going on in the world and what's current, and not real sure what else to talk about today, right? It's on everybody's mind.
Right.
Everybody's kind of wondering what to do, how to handle these things. And so we wanted to bring you first of all, kind of an update of what we're doing at the association to kind of manage this, just to make you aware, but also to talk about as a realtor, how can you best handle your business? I've had some questions of, what's my liability? How do I, deal with things like showings and open houses and all those kinds of things? And so there's a lot of questions. And, so we wanted to just discuss some of those issues, give you some insight as to what NAR has put out, and maybe just some personal thoughts and best practices that you should be considering when dealing with these issues.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're not really going to talk about what the coronavirus is because I'm sure everyone's heard enough of that.
Right.
As to what to do, how to stay safe, and all that stuff. Just, uh, social distance if you can and keep clean is essentially what it is.
Right, right. So, continue to check out what the CDC and the federal government, the state government is advising people to do. Obviously, they have a lot more information than the rest of us do.
Right.
Personally, as I just told Nabil before we got on here, I've got a great aunt who's 89 years old and is exhibiting some symptoms. And so my mother's trying to figure out how to get her to the doctor. According to Bill, your wife is a doctor and is out there on the front lines of this thing,
Yeah.
working with
And
patients. And
even she was saying she's never seen something like this before, and their whole system is essentially turned into very something out of a movie. I'm telling you,
yeah,
it just sounds really bizarre.
it is.
But the good thing is that they have a plan, right? They had a plan in place and they're implementing it.
Right, right. And that's,
So
I was talking to my sister and she used to work in the healthcare industry in a variety of capacities and worked in hospitals and said, we used to have drills, they would do, a disease breakout drill and train on this. So the hospitals have plans.
hmm
Obviously, there have been some issues with testing and those kinds of things and making sure that we do have tests available, how to deal with the capacity and all that. But hospitals do plan for this. So,
yeah,
at least
and
there's a plan going into place.
right, and they're never not going to see someone that needs help.
Right.
Right?
No.
They'll always be there to help, but if it's something minor, then they're going to be like, hey, you should probably stay home because you'll get even worse if you stay here.
Right, right. So, from an association standpoint, us at the state association for this week, we have implemented working from home. So Nabil and I are each in our respective homes today, and
Our
we're
home studios.
our home studios. Yeah. So we apologize. The audio quality probably isn't quite up to the typical standards, but again, we wanted to keep bringing you this information and hope this is timely and helpful. But so we're working from home, but we're all still available. If you've got a need for something, you're not going to be able to call us because we're not at the office, but shoot us an email to support@okrealtors.com. And that's how you can get a hold of us in whatever capacity you need at the association, and we'll be able to point you in the right direction if you need something. So that's how to get a hold of us at the state association. We've also had to cancel a number of things. We had a big professional standards training that was scheduled this week for Thursday. That's been postponed until we don't know when. We're just kind of monitoring things, see what's going to happen. We've got another one scheduled at the end of April that is still, we're still planning to move forward, but, put a pin in it, pencil it in, because, we'll just have to see how these things develop, and we'll see if things have changed by then. And
Right.
so just,
And what the
stay
new
tuned for that.
guidelines are.
Exactly. Because
Right.
again, this is all going to be potentially changing by then. A number of other meetings, things like that we've all had to cancel and postpone. So if you're a part of any committees or things like that have meetings coming up, there's a pretty good chance that either we've moved it online, so it'll be through a teleconferencing system, something like that. So just kind of stay tuned to that, because we're going to keep business moving, but we're just going to have to do it in a little bit different way.
Yes,
And
for sure.
we actually had a call yesterday with all of our local association executives, and similar things. A lot of education classes are being canceled or postponed. So you probably got some information from your local association about how they're dealing with it. But suffice to say that we're all kind of paying attention and trying to make sure that we're all doing the right things to keep everybody safe. So keep your eyes peeled for any information about that as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And like Jeff said, if you have anything you need from us, support@okrealtors.com, and we'll be on it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, but we also want to talk today about the day-to-day life of a realtor in the midst of the coronavirus outbreak, because I've seen a lot of questions. They've been coming across on Facebook. Questions have been coming in just through the legal line, and just discussion about how people are handling things and what advice people have for dealing with showings and open houses, those kinds of things, liability
Mm-hmm.
issues. And so this is probably a good opportunity just to run through, how you should be considering looking at these things, because every case is going to be a little bit different. But we have to keep in mind that, of course, the federal government, CDC, local governments, state governments, they're all talking about limiting interactions on, gatherings of, it's, I think now down basically advising
To
10 or more
10.
people. Yeah.
Yeah.
That we should be
That's
avoiding that.
that's nothing. That's a big household sometimes.
Right. Exactly. So we're talking about drastically limiting. So, again, what are this present for the real estate industry? Obviously there's a lot of concern. People are fearful. And so you've probably, if you've got listings or buyers, maybe you've already had some of these questions of how do we deal with these things. And we also have to be careful about our obligations under the Fair Housing Act
Mm-hmm.
to not discriminate against anybody in some particular segment of the population. So, an example of this would be that, this all began in China. And that means that, we have to be cautious to not treat people that may be of Asian descent differently, because we've got this in our minds that, oh, this came from China, so I need to be careful about that, right? That's going to be an issue
Right.
that we do still have to keep that Fair Housing Act in mind, make sure we're treating everybody the same. So this is where, if you're a broker or even just an individual agent, you need to consider, what's my policy about how I'm handling these things. And that'll help protect you from any other incidental violations of the Fair Housing Act or something like that. And so we do have some unique issues that we have to be considerate of. And so we want to make sure that everybody has a plan. And just like we talked about, the hospital has a plan, you need to have a plan about how you're dealing with your clients, how you're answering these questions. And again, the key here is we're treating everybody the same.
Right. And kind of what you said, if Asian descent, treat them the same, but also geographically, right? If you're like, hey, you're from Tulsa and there were more cases there or something, you still have to treat them the same as you would everyone else. So, like you were saying, the plane protects you from a lot of open liability.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, you can implement a change for all your clients or none of them.
Right.
And that's the
Right.
important thing to keep in mind.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So,
So,
the next,
I'm
oh,
I'm
go
gonna
ahead.
throw out some scenarios at you.
Sure.
I love doing this. Throw out some scenarios at you and see how realtors should react in that situation or how they should handle it beforehand.
Sounds good.
Okay, so in the realtor's daily life, right? Um, they might typically drive clients from showings or to showings. Can they say, "Hey, I don't feel safe driving," or can they refuse to do this now?
Yeah, so it's very common that maybe you've got a buyer, you're going to go around to 5 or 6 houses, and so you throw them in your car and you just take one car. Makes sense. Let you have a good discussion. It's efficient, those kinds of things. But with the concern of the spread of virus, we've seen things that the virus can stay living on certain surfaces for 24 hours, 3 days, those kinds of things. So you may have a concern about putting people in your car. There's also been a lot of discussion of people that have no symptoms that could still have the virus and be able to spread it. So just as a matter
Mm-hmm.
of precaution and keeping that social distancing, can you change that practice? And absolutely you can. And again, what we started out by saying is that you have to treat everybody the same. So, the best case here is that if you're going to say, I'm not really comfortable driving people around in my car, your best bet is to decide to stop driving clients altogether and just have, if you're still going to go on showings, have them meet you at the property and you drive separately. So that's probably going to be your best bet, is to make sure that you do that. Because if you get into a situation of, well, I'm asking certain questions of people, but I'm not necessarily treating everybody the same, that's what's going to increase your risk there, of liability issues, legal issues. So your best bet is to just have the same policy for everybody that, right now, while they're recommending these social distancing recommendations, if we're going to go look at properties, we're just going to drive separately and we're going to meet at each property individually. If you do decide you're going to still, be comfortable with people in your car, again, just keep in mind that there are recommendations for cleaning and disinfecting surfaces, door handles, all those kinds of things. And so,
Mm-hmm.
just keep that in mind as well, that you should implement probably some extra cleanliness practices if you are going to do that. But by all means, you don't have to feel obligated to drive people around. Just treat everybody the same.
You just mentioned that if you're asking people questions, or what
Yes.
kind of questions can you ask them at this time? Like, can you get more details from them? Be like, are you sick? Are you feeling sick? What kind of questions can you ask to be safe?
Yeah, I think that this is a difficult one because we do want to be careful about asking questions that get too deep into personal medical information, diagnoses from doctors, those kinds of things that can lead to a potential allegation that you are discriminating against somebody based on a disability, right? So this does go back to Fair
Mm-hmm.
Housing Act issues. You don't want to be discriminating against anybody based on that. However, I think that you can ask people about their recent travel. So, if they've been to some place that has a higher risk of coronavirus, the thing is, you need to ask everybody the same question. Again, this goes back to treating everybody the same, and this is having a plan and a policy in place. And what I really recommend is looking at some of the factual information from like the CDC and so forth about who's in the higher risk category. So you'd want to look at those things of, have you had a fever or anything like that? You feeling okay? Just basic questions to make sure that you feel comfortable that nobody may currently have any kind of illness or maybe a higher risk. and then address those the same way you would with anybody. So if you think they're sick, if you think they have a higher risk, say, would you be comfortable rescheduling until you're feeling better? Those kinds of things. So again, treat everybody the same. If you're going to ask questions, keep it to very like current factual information. Base your questions on recommendations from public health authorities. Don't pry too far into medical information that could lead to potential discriminatory issues based on disability. And
Right.
again, just treat everybody the same.
Yeah. We want to get as much information as we can, but we want to stay within the limits.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, as realtors, as an industry, we're pretty mobile, and we have the opportunity to, work remotely and practice this social distancing. But sometimes we still need that face to face and maybe hold an open house or a closing or something like that. How should realtors handle that situation if they're, either uncomfortable being in a social setting or um, any precautions they can take, things like that?
Yeah, I think that, we've got a couple of issues here. I mean, one, you've got larger brokerage offices that need to be considering how they're handling things because you may have agents coming and going, those kinds of things. And so you need to decide what kind of plan you're going to have as a broker. At a minimum, if you've got somebody who's sick or exhibiting signs of illness, you just need to really have a stay at home policy. Like if you're sick, go home, don't come to the office. That just needs to be 24/7, 365. But in particular now, that's a good policy to be considering. And so brokers, are you talking with your agents about how you're going to handle this? Are you more broadly just going to have a policy of, look, we're not coming into the office or only coming in if you need to, right? Maybe you got to do some printing, something along those lines that you can't do at home. But
Hmm.
otherwise, outside of that, we're going to make sure that we're um, going to be staying at home, working from home, and minimizing our contact and being out interacting with each other, as well as having things like hand sanitizer, hand soap in the bathrooms, all those kinds of things that you want to make sure you're well stocked on so that people coming into the office can feel comfortable that they've got the tools there to stay healthy. Um,
If you can find them.
if you can find them, absolutely. And so, just keep that in mind. But hopefully, you can still get most of those things, and again, have that policy in place if you're a broker. Talk to your agents about what the expectations are and what your plan is. As an individual agent, again, you are still out here trying to conduct business. Obviously, life has changed, but we may still have clients that you're wanting to talk to about listing their house or buyers and those kinds of things. And you may have occasion to have personal contact. And again, you have to assess how comfortable you are with that. If you're going to ask them questions about their well-being, whether they're ill right now or not, again, it goes back to asking everybody the same questions. Treat everybody the same and make your reasonable judgment based on that. If you have to have face-to-face contact with people, again, follow those guidelines that are being set. I could go through any number of those. We're all aware of what they are. Maintaining some distance, maybe don't shake hands, maybe, all those kinds of things. And some of those recommendations are even changing. So again, just keep up to speed on what's being recommended and be careful about those face-to-face contact. And again, have a plan. Just have a plan in place and kind of adjust it from there.
That was some fantastic advice for the brokers in office settings and how they should handle that. What about people that, have a property for sale or something like that and they need to have an open house?
Yeah, I think this is one of the big questions that's been out there is, are people still having open houses? How to deal with those? I think the step one is you need to consider what's your liability as an individual agent or brokerage. I can't necessarily tell you what like your legal liability is, right? Because some questions have come up. Well, what if somebody gets exposed? If somebody sick comes in, what's my exposure from a legal standpoint of
Hmm.
liability? Man, I don't know that I can answer that question because this is such a unique thing. We've never done this before. So there isn't a lot of precedence to look at to say, here's your liability. So what can you do? First of all, you need to put the ball in your seller's court and you need to have a very frank conversation with them and say, look, we know what's going on right now. I'm willing to hold an open house, but let's talk about the pros and cons of that. And let's talk about your comfort level as a seller, because ultimately it's their decision. Are they comfortable with having random people coming in through an open house into their home and risking
Right.
whatever exposure there may be? So that's really kind
Yeah.
of the first thing is you need to see, is your seller really comfortable with it? Talk about the pros, talk about the cons, whatever it is, but let them make that decision. If they're comfortable with it and moving forward, and you're comfortable with it as an agent, because everybody's got to be comfortable with doing it, then the next step is, again, make sure you've done whatever you can to have a safe environment. So if you have some hand sanitizer you can have at the entryway when people come in, ask them to use it when they come in case they open cabinets, those kinds of things, good practice. Have soap available at all the sinks. Have disposable towels. So maybe bring in some extra disposable paper towels so they aren't using a hand
Mm.
towel of your clients. That's a good practice as well. And so making sure you have those tools available so that you're minimizing exposure as people come in. And again, trying to keep physical distance from people. But that's all those practices that we're doing in daily life. You need to try to implement in that open house as well. And so keep those things in mind. And again, have that conversation with your seller, or if it's buyers wanting to go look at houses, before you schedule them and everything, you need to say and have a proactive conversation. Okay, look, we know there's some crazy things going on. We've got this outbreak. Are you comfortable going forward and looking at 4 or 5 houses or whatever the case is, and have that conversation and make sure that your client is comfortable with proceeding. And if they are, you need to assess your comfort level as well. And if everybody's on the same page, then, again, do the best you can to keep yourself safe. But do you have
Right.
some great exposure of liability legally? Probably not, but I can't say for certain because, again, we don't know. We've never been through this kind of circumstance. So again, it comes down to making sure that if you're going to expose yourself and your clients to that risk, that everybody has willingly and voluntarily assumed that risk, whatever it may be, and then you can move forward from there. So that's your best bet, is to make sure you start with that conversation.
And going back to the open house thing, just as alternatives, you could also do, some live videos or, and some people are already doing this, but you could do it more often with open houses, doing live videos or tours, or just have like an open house chat, right, where people are looking at this video and asking you a question or whatever that might be. So there are some alternatives that you could explore. You can get creative with it, and I think people might appreciate that as well.
I think that's a great idea. I mean, you can live stream on any number of platforms: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and
Hmm.
anything else. And so having a live open house with question and answers in the comments, those kinds of things, I think that's a great idea as an alternative right now, and may just be a new kind of alternative marketing opportunity that you want to take advantage of in the future. So
True.
be willing to think through non-traditional methods of being able to market properties so that you can still build up that interest, those kinds of things, without necessarily having an open house if people aren't as comfortable doing that. I think that's a great recommendation.
True. And you had mentioned maybe some questions coming in through the legal line and things like that. Anything out of left field that you've seen come at you and you're like, oh, did not even think about this.
Not yet. It's all been just kind of these basic issues that we're talking about. Has really been where people's heads are at right now. But certainly, if we get any kind of very novel question that people need to know about, we'll certainly update you on that. I think we're probably going to get Josh back on here in the next few days to talk about some crazy things going on with the legislature and how they're
Yeah.
handling things, and what's going
Hmm.
on down at the Capitol. So we know realtors like to stay up to speed on that kind of stuff. And so there's been a lot of very interesting changes that they're implementing. And maybe on that episode, if anything interesting has come in through the legal line, we'll kind of update you there too.
Yeah, it's always surprising what people will think of sometimes or what scenarios they find themselves in.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So, well, we hope this has been at least a little bit helpful to get you thinking in the right direction of how you're handling this in your business. Again, we just want everybody out there to stay safe, stay well, and, continue to monitor what's going on with, the federal government recommendations, state government recommendations. And, hopefully we can have here in a few months, maybe we'll be past this or however long it takes. And we can look back on this and just think about some of the lessons we've learned. And so, again, use this as an opportunity to think through your business. And if things have slowed down a little bit, what other stuff can you be working on to continue to generate business, those kinds of things. So again, stay safe, stay well out there. And if you have any other questions, don't forget you can reach out to us at support@okrealtors.com. And if you have legal questions, hit us up on the legal line at okrealtors.com/legal.
Yep. And if you haven't done so yet, hit that subscribe button, because we'll be here to keep you company if you're working from home. So you can catch up on some of our episodes and listen to all the new ones that we will still be coming out with weekly, and with special ones with Josh on Friday.
Absolutely. So we'll see you soon on a special episode of Talking Real to do that legislative update. And otherwise, we'll see you next Tuesday on Talking Real.